Hello. Oh, we lost one.
Just now got it. Sorry, 15 minutes later. That's how long we've been talking. I just now got your t-shirt and the mask joke. My bad.
What's up, everybody? I was just dreaming.
Ha 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 ha.
Dreaming that we were doing Literally Wasted, and now here we are. Welcome. It's December, and we are here to talk about a graphic novel, at least the first volume of graphic novel.
You can see the reflection of us in it.
We've got The Sandman, written by Neil Gaiman,
There we go.
illustrated by a whole heap of people.
Yes.
A whole heap.
A whole heap of people.
A heap of people. That's fun to say.
Okay. Heap of people. Who's here, Talia?
I'll tell you who's here.
Got a big YouTube crowd.
Hi, Giggles and Tammy and Scott and Christopher, Jennifer, Spare and Brandy. Hi, Brenda and Kent and Kelly and Jody and Cindy and Brandy again. Hi, Kristen and Rachel and Henry and Stacey and Bobby and Judy and Kira. Hi, Jay and KW Class 09 and Adrian Scott. Jan and Jeff and Martin, Julie, Missy, Kelly, Kira, Dan, Kira, Leanne, Julie, Giggles, Anna, Dan, Lisa, and Joe.
Wow, it's been we had a long little string of that at the end. Hello. All right. So this will be our one and only book discussion of the month. As you know, it is December. The holidays are approaching. Things get kind of crazy.
Book discussion.
Yeah, 2 weeks from now we will have our.
No, it's next week.
1 week.
I am just all discombobulated.
He's still asleep.
Too much sleep. Next week will be our Literally Wasted holiday hangout.
Yep.
So join us for that. It will be fun.
And you don't have to read anything.
You don't have to read anything unless you want to.
Jingle bells, Batman smells.
But today we'll have our book discussion for this graphic novel, which is again something a little bit different, a little bit of a different experience than what we're used to, even though we've done it a few times now. The Sandman. This is like a bunch of different little stories collected.
It's like 8 issues.
Yeah, a bunch of issues.
Yeah, each one's like the little comic.
And I guess we can go ahead and just get started. I can go first. Whoa, is what I have to say about this. This was bonkers. This was nuts. And I know graphic novels read differently than regular novels. But it Dan sums it up. This was all over the place. This was like the whole time I'm reading this, I'm thinking, how does one come up with this stuff?
Yeah.
Because this was crazy. We had some people comment that they had a hard time sort of following along or figuring out what was going on. I had a little bit of that, but I was able to kind of pick it back. Like I got lost and then I found myself, and I got lost and found myself, kind of like a dream. And but on the whole, I think I enjoyed it. I think it was so bizarre and different that I'm like, this is kind of. There were some parts that traumatized me deeply, but like that whole scene in the diner, the whole thing that took place in that diner was just good.
Well,
God,
let's not dive in just yet, because.
But it, the fact that this like skirted sort of like DC universe, and like, I mean, it's in the DC universe obviously, but like, you like have these random pop-ins from like Arkham Asylum and Constantine, and like I thought it was pretty cool. And I think the Sandman as a character took a minute for me to kind of like warm up to.
Is it because he was completely silent for the first issue?
It's possible, yeah. But then as you kind of got to know him, it was bizarrely refreshing, I would say. And that's all I'm going to say for now before we dive in. Next.
I mean, I really enjoyed it. It's weird and messed up, some of it, and just so creative. I had some of the same feelings of like, how does one person come up with all of this? It was crazy.
Cynthia, I did this.
Yeah. I I mean, I think the timing is really good. I have not watched the Netflix show or listened to the Audible stuff, and I now really want to do both. And I also want to read more. I enjoyed it for the most part, although some of it I think stuck with me and maybe not in a great way.
That's some horrific imagery.
Oh,
that
yeah.
You just opened up to.
I'm
So.
sorry. I'm just flipping through it, like scarring at him.
Yeah. Whoa. Whoa.
Yeah, I want to read more of it if it's not like the 24 hours in the diner. This was very interesting for me because it's like saying, hey, did you like this TV show as a whole? But it's like very much dissected into different episodes. So, which, duh, because this is basically, you know, like the volume of different issues. But this one was kind of a roller coaster for me. I like started out okay, and then somewhat early on, I don't remember exactly where, but somewhere in the first quarter of it, I ironically fell asleep, and then got back into it and got like really into it, and then all the stuff with John D happened, which really turned me off of it. Didn't like anything that had to do with him. And I would friggin' hope so, man. So like all of that like really just kind of pushed me away. And then I got very confused. And then, because all the stuff, like you were saying before, like with the dream stuff, where it's like you get lost, but then you come back in, like, cool. I like how it's almost like he intentionally wants you to be lost because you're getting little bits and pieces, and then the puzzle comes together at the end. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the reveals and getting to put everything together. And when you get that stuff where you're like, ooh, that makes sense. I enjoyed that. I got a little lost in some areas towards the end. Or maybe I just kind of like end up rushing through some of the stuff after the diner. So maybe I skipped over the parts that would make sense in my head. And then at the end, I was like hooked again. And I was like, oh, it's his sister. Oh, so like I'm interested. It obviously is so creative. The art is compelling and horrifying. So I don't know. Yeah, it was just a roller coaster for me, like queasiness included. So I definitely would like there are aspects that I definitely found very interesting and would love to read more. But I just, yeah, some of the stuff that was truly horrific, like if I knew it was going to be that frequent, if that's going to end up continuing to be like a frequent thing that happens, it just might not be for me. But that I don't think it's bad. Obviously, it's just that's a personal preference.
Yeah. Well, I did see in a bunch of the comments that 24 hours is the worst that Sandman gets. But I mean, there were other moments of discomfort too.
Matt mentioned the death issue as being the the epilogue as being the part where he fell in love with it. I really enjoyed that chapter as well. I think that's what kind of grounded it all for me because that was probably the most grounded chapter or section of the whole thing. It kind of brought it all back to sort of a place that I can comprehend. And plus it was fascinating, like the fact that Death is his sister and they have this relationship, and she does what she does and he does what he does. But that was an interesting chapter. I mean, we can kind of take it, I guess, a piece at a time because I had to kind of like recap my brain to be like, okay, this is what just happened. Like for episode 1.
Oh yeah, do you have the breakdown by issue?
Yeah,
sweet.
Yeah, so episode 1, we've got the cultists summoning him and imprisoning him and basically just like holding him, and because he's unable to function as he normally does, the sleep sickness occurs and people start having these different but like kind of bizarre sleep manifestations, and like
still horrifying.
Still horrifying.
Yeah.
But they all kind of are different. Like Um,
Well, there's the one guy who like basically sleeps for 12 years and then wakes
one
up
guy
and
who
doesn't
can't.
talk and like zombies around.
yeah,
And then
the one.
there's the two women who both fall asleep and like wake up less and less frequently. Unless I have a list of them. Let's see.
I feel like it set the tone really
Oh, we got-
well for what was coming.
We got some facts here.
Ah,
The sleep
interesting.
sickness was an
No.
actual historical event,
Oh, thank you.
which is that makes it even more fascinating that he kind of based it on that because.
Yeah.
But the whole thing, the whole chapter, the whole section is just the passage of time as this original cultist grows old and dies, and then the son sort of takes over, and then they have some infighting, all the while the Sandman gets imprisoned
and is completely quiet too.
he doesn't
And-
do
Or
anything.
like Matt's comment.
And if you're curious, it's from 1916 to 1988, which is 72 years is his captivity.
long time.
So it's important to remember that Gaiman was very much figuring out what the series is and how to write it as he went. To me, the death chapter is where he figured it out. It becomes a showcase to tell stories where concepts are people. See, like, I think I would enjoy that. I will say this very much like was great. And I think, I mean, obviously it's named, this collection's named Preludes and Nocturnes, which, you know, just says this is giving you history and setting things up, which is great. Sets the tone really, really well. But also like,
Yeah. I also read in one of the, I feel like it was someone's comments that they made Neil Gaiman add a lot of the DC stuff. Like that wasn't kind of what he was originally thinking. And that after this volume, it kind of, he backs off on the established DC stuff. You guys confirm or tell me I'm wrong if that's not the case.
No spoilers.
Oh yeah, but I mean, just kind of the vibe that it is, and a lot of people were wondering, like, did that throw people off? Like the John Constantine and who was it?
I mean, it had like a bunch
Scott
of
Free
like
and
Scott-Free, this
Arkham,
for
the Justin
Morningstar.
League.
Phillips.
Yeah, a bunch of Arkham stuff. You're right.
But yeah,
and the Martian. Yeah, like I won't say that it threw me off, but I was just
Cain
a
and
little
Abel.
like I was like, oh, that wasn't what I expected.
Just some like random character. And you know what I think helped, and I'm surely they didn't do this when these were first released, but like this book was, for me, my version was kind of framed by these like disclaimers from either like the editor or Neil Gaiman. Like I think the editor was first and then Neil Gaiman was at the end. Where they were basically like, hey guys, like we know this isn't very good, but like we got to start somewhere, you know, and like we figured it out, but like looking back like at it, this is pretty rough. This is just kind of a rough end of what we're doing with the Sandman. That helped me a little bit. Like it helped me like.
Oh, I didn't read
Yeah.
that. I should have read that.
Also, like you guys' comments in the group really helped me. Like going in knowing that there were DC characters and it threw some of you off helped me be able to like accept that better and just kind of, I don't know, I really appreciated the little heads ups that I got from the group.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody kind of talking about DC characters before I read it. That was good. So episode 1 was just like him being and just escaping. Like,
Yeah, and then he escaped at the end.
He escaped and he was like, I got it. And so this basically is just this whole Preludes and Nocturnes is kind of just a fetch quest. It's Sandman trying to reclaim his artifacts that give him his power.
His tools.
So he goes and sees Cain and Abel, who have this bizarrely morbid relationship and like masochistic, brutal relationship.
And it was so sad too. Like at the end, the one was like telling the story of like a happy brother relationship. Maybe sad. But Jody asked about that in the group. She said, what was the meaning of Cain and Abel line and the whole the Cain and Abel line. And Scott came in and said, let me go ahead and throw this in here. The House of Mystery and the House of Secrets were titles of 1970s horror anthology series published by DC Comics. Cain and Abel were the hosts for those books, kind of like the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt. So the idea is that Morpheus / Dream is the Lord of Dreams, which also means he is the Lord of Stories. Thus, Cain and Abel being storytellers makes them creatures of dream.
Okay.
And I thought the Cain and Abel stuff was super random, but I really liked having this explanation. It kind of gave context to it.
It was random.
It really was.
But it wasn't boring. It was
No.
like it was like
I honestly was more thrown off by the gargoyle.
Gregory and Irving or
well, all the
Goldie.
gargoyles have to have G names, you know. So
Yeah.
Gerving.
but then okay, so he was just he just went to them and basically was like they were basically like, you got one question, we give you one answer. Was that them or was that the other people?
That was
those the witches.
The three.
The witches.
Yeah.
The crones.
Yeah.
Or it's like
Is
the
that in that
crone, the
chapter?
maiden, and the mother. So the
Yes,
name of
that
the
was
three.
in their chapter.
That was in the Cain and Abel
Yeah.
chapter.
Yeah.
So he's trying to track down these
That is
tools.
very mythology, which I saw some people talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like the fates. But like so then they basically give him these like cryptic descriptions of where his stuff might be.
Matt.
Mm-hmm.
What did he do? Oh. I'm gonna put it up there.
All right.
It's on there. It's on the internet now. And then we have the John Constantine chapter. And I will admit, I am not like the biggest connoisseur of Constantine. I have not seen the Keanu Reeves movie, nor have I seen the show. Don't know much about who or what Constantine is. But you know, he got Constantine to help him find the sand
From his ex.
from Constantine's ex.
Yeah.
Who was in a really bad place. Like she was real
Dead.
And her
to
poor
the
dad.
Sand. Ugh. Ugh.
like they found her and he basically had to beg Sandman to give her like an easy out, right?
Yes. And her poor dad. Okay.
Yeah.
It was just the
But
room.
yeah, he was like covered.
Oh, he was
covered the room. Yeah. But what was
But he wasn't dead, remember?
No, he was still alive. And I don't know if anybody else made this connection, but that reminded me strongly
No
of
spoilers.
of Sea and Shadows and Sea, like
Oh, yeah.
Nakothi and her grossness. Remember, like, just if you get it, you get it. But
Yeah, if you know, you know.
yeah, but I went back.
Yeah, the dad was just kind of spread out like peanut butter on the walls.
Why
And,
would you even say that?
And still alive.
Yes. So she was addicted to the sand and she was, you know, she was in a real bad place. Like the way they just like they had this like thing at the beginning where she was like scratching her skin and like
Mm-hmm.
Well, it
Yeah.
was she hadn't moved in God knows how
Yeah,
long,
she had
so she
bed
was covered
sores
in
and
bed
stuff.
sores because she was addicted to the sand.
Yeah.
yeah, he's not a zombie though. Talia.
Oh, that makes it less gross.
So he gets his sand back from Constantine's ex, and then the next chapter is him going to hell. I found this chapter to actually be pretty straightforward. Where he goes to hell and has like a one-up battle with a demon.
Yeah, I like to think of it as a poetry slam battle, but with metaphors.
I think it's just they're just one-upping each other.
Corona Zone.
I know it was fun.
Where they're saying like I'm this,
But in a
and he's like,
jazz
"Well, I'm
bar,
this."
and I
It's
love
like-
that there were costume changes involved.
Yeah, they went to like the Hellfire Club or whatever it was.
It was the Hellfire Club.
Hellfire Club, like in Stranger Things.
Yeah. And did anybody no, it was the Hellfire Bar? It was a little bit
Hellfire
different.
Lounge,
Maybe. But did anybody else read Patrick Rothfuss's introduction to the 30th anniversary
I
one?
did not have that in my version, so I will read it right now.
Yeah,
I have
it's
it,
on.
but I didn't.
He mentioned that he plays that game that Morpheus played in hell with his two kids, and his kids are like weirdly good at it.
Oh.
And like having read that before I started it,
It's the Hellfire Club.
Right.
Sorry.
I really enjoyed it once we got to the game because I was like wondering what is this game that he plays with his kids, and it was really fun to kind of know that was coming.
I actually found it to be refreshing because it did not involve horrific violence.
Yeah,
Because they're already in hell. Like, how much worse could it be?
Although if you look too closely at the demons, you're like,
oh yeah, they all look pretty horrific. Hey,
this came out of someone's brain, and
this whole thing came out of someone's brain.
I know, but if you look at the pictures and the art, I'm like,
Yeah, no, it looks. But the hell
looks.
chapter I actually really enjoyed. Although
a
you know,
lot of
like,
eyeballs in here and a
the
lot of
terms of
boobs.
the terms of their arrangement, like we knew what was going to happen to Sandman when if he lost, because he was like, yeah, sure, I'll stay down here, whatever. We didn't know it was going to happen to the other guy if he lost. They just kind of it seemed like they just kind of made that up as they went. They were like, well, you lost. Time to go to more damnation and awful torture. But yeah, so that hell chapter was cool, and then
Where did
Passengers is the next
Beelzebub
one,
look that way?
and that's where he goes to the Justice League and talks to Scott Free, and they locate his ruby in the storage unit. That's also where we get the Dr. Destiny and Rosemary storyline,
carjacking.
which was so interesting to me because it was started off a little scary, the carjacking bit, and then it got really sweet and kind on both sides, and then he ends up
Then he ruined it.
he
shot her.
did, and I was not expecting it, and it caught me so off guard.
I
kinda
was very
expecting it.
disappointed by that, but it did set the tone for the next one because then you realize he's a psycho monster.
He is.
He sure is a psycho monster, but like I thought the car ride was like I thought the car ride was really fascinating. Like I thought that whole dynamic was really interesting, and I never expected to kind of sympathize with this sort of like horrific, deranged demon man. And there's there's something going on with his mom who just died. Like that's not a functional family, I don't think. But the Scott Free stuff.
His dream at the beginning of that issue was really interesting to me.
I don't remember that. Refresh.
It's where he's like kind of like in a child's body, and he gets trapped in this like iron thing, and then he like tries to escape, and he has to say his name, and then all the people that were like trapping him or helping him end up like dying or something.
Okay, but I would
yeah.
be terrified too if a naked, scary man
Yeah, he was a scary man.
forced his way into my vehicle and then had a gun and told me to go somewhere. Yes, I would also be terrified and nice and also want him to cover up. Like,
Yeah, you can use Harry's jacket.
I feel like that's justified behavior.
There are no functional families in the series.
Hmm.
Well, and
then we have 24 hours.
good gravy. That whole section of this book was
I gotta say, it was fascinating, and
it did a good job at what it was supposed to do.
Such a good job, and I wasn't expecting it. Like, even though we got some pretty gruesome stuff in the issues beforehand, I was not expecting that issue. And I mean, it's terrible, but I really enjoyed it for what it was.
Well, it started so interestingly with the waitress who was a writer. Like she was like, that was her secret identity, was like she viewed herself as like a superhero, as like this writer, as this weaver of stories, and like being a waitress. There's like everybody thinks I'm a waitress. But I'm really a writer. I'm really memorizing their lives and like telling their stories, but I'm going to change their stories. I'm going to give everybody a happy ending.
And it's so interesting that they start with that and end up with such a terrible, terrible ending for all of them.
Yes.
But just the juxtaposition's so good.
Yeah, no, I mean,
it was so gratuitous. It wasn't like he just murdered them or he just like tortured them once. It was just ceaseless awfulness, and
Yeah.
it was really, really difficult to stomach.
It was, but it was, I think, when you look at it as like everything is intentional, like I think they wanted you to feel that way. I think
Yeah,
that
but
they
then he
did
was
their
so
job.
terrible, and then the Sandman just took him home.
Like I'm here watching these two people have a conversation while one of them hammers nails into the guy's hand. And you're just like, this is really messed up.
It's really messed
This
up.
is really messed up.
Yeah.
Somebody got their head chopped off. There was just so much awfulness in this chapter.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about that one.
Okay, so the next issue is Sound and Fury, which is the battle in the dream world with Dr. Destiny.
The battle in the dream world with Dr. D.
With Dr. D.
Um,
Where Dr. D is like sucking out his soul or whatever with the
Yes.
ruby, and then he decides that
he's going to
destroy it and destroy the Sandman in the process, but it doesn't quite work out that way.
You didn't listen
Oh,
to the audiobook, did you?
Mm-mm.
Okay, good.
I'm glad I didn't.
Glad I didn't either. Apparently it's in the show, and it makes me not want to watch the show. But
Yeah, I don't know. I did just look up pictures after I finished the graphic novel. I went to IMDb and just looked at some of the casting and pictures just to get ideas. And I feel like they cast the Sandman really well. And then I enjoyed looking at all these other characters who we didn't meet, so I didn't know any of them. But yeah, it looked interesting. I don't know that I'll watch it.
the fact is, though, that humans have as much cruelty in them as they have love and compassion. That is what Gaiman is talking about in 24 Hours. 24 Hours really just felt like unleashing of the id here, if we want to get Freudian. It was like, I can't do bad things in real life, but I'm going to unleash in this one chapter and just like go all out. To me, 24 Hours is Gaiman exploring the idea that storytelling is a way that we trick ourselves into thinking that everything always works out the best, which is obviously not the case. Yeah. There's definitely things you can glean from that section. As horrific and painful as it was, it's definitely a statement about stuff. But the battle in the dream world, Dr. D didn't he didn't die, did he? He didn't. They took him back to Arkham.
He took him back to Arkham, and then he gave him
Scarecrow
restful sleep with no dreams.
Yeah.
And I thought it was so interesting that at the beginning of the book, he makes Alex Burgess like have the waking nightmares just constantly, and then at the end with Dr. D, he gives him this kind of
basically
peace,
the opposite.
actually.
Yeah. Oh, what he did to Alex Burgess was just cruel. I mean, he probably deserved it, but like,
well, I think it's also just kind of shows you where he was at that time, because he had just gotten out of captivity after 72 years.
But the way they portrayed the like series of dreams within a dream was really well done. Because like, it made me feel bad. And it made me feel bad for him.
Nothing says you're not quite awake yet, like your nurse's head falling off and
then still talking to you and being like, ah ha ha.
Yeah.
But then he takes him back to Arkham Asylum, and I thought the Scarecrow being there was an interesting choice because of what the Scarecrow does to people. At least, most of my knowledge of Scarecrow comes from the movie.
Well, remind us, what does the Scarecrow do?
He makes people like hallucinate their worst nightmares. Like you've seen The Dark Knight, right? Where he has this little powder and he shoots it into people's faces, and all of a sudden they see worms coming out of people's faces and stuff. Batman sees bats, of course, because why do we fall? Like he's in the realm of nightmares. They just he preys on fear, which is in the way that he sort of manifests nightmares and things like that. But it's just an interesting choice, an interesting little cameo to see there, and then you get little glimpses of Batman and Superman. They're the Justice League International. They've gone beyond America.
JLI.
JLI.
LLC.
Yeah. But so okay, that was kind of like we kind of went through. It was kind of like a refresh recap of all the different episodes in this. Whew, and there's
I
more.
know we usually do this at the end, but I really do want to know, are y'all going to keep reading?
I am definitely. And I'm going to explore both the Netflix series and the audiobook, I think. But I think I'm going to read
Netflix
the
with you.
comics first.
But you want to read comics first?
Well, we can. We'll
How many
talk
more
about
are they? How many more are
it.
there?
Someone said like 80 something.
80.
Well, like probably issues.
I was
don't
going to say you
remember.
mean 80 issues, right? Because if there's 80 volumes, I don't think it can do it.
So someone mentioned it above. It's like way past, but it was a lot.
It went by fast. And if they're all on Hoopla, then I can just read them on my phone like I did before.
Right. Scott said 12 volumes. That's still a lot.
12 volumes. Well, this came out in what, like 94 or 93 or something?
I mean, I kind of wasn't going to, but because of, I was just worried it was going to be more of the 24 hours.
Yeah.
And I was like, if it's that consistent, if this is like how, like the tone that it has forever, then maybe one day I'll watch the Netflix show and meh. But if it gets better and if that was the worst and it doesn't
89.
come back or like not as often and not like that, then I'm more interested. And once again, that's not me saying that it's bad or anything. That's just like personal preference on like how much I can stomach and how frequently. Because sometimes I just want butterflies and puppies and cookies.
Oh yeah, of course. And
There's
like
some butterflies in here.
that's one of
I
the
think
things
it's cute.
about books and stories. It's just that not everything is for everyone, and that's totally okay.
Oof. Oh, see, I like mythology, so okay.
These covers, though, I think Matt mentioned it earlier.
They're trippy.
Yeah, they really are. Like this cover, like I'm guessing these are like where were these like on the front of like where were these?
Bobby, I actually
originally.
think that would be worse for me. One,
What is all
my
this?
ADD does not like audiobooks. But like I think with the graphic novels, it's actually fine because what I see is the worst it could be. Whereas in an audiobook, my brain is like, let's get worser.
I don't like the sounds.
So yeah. I don't know. Also, I can just like focus on the words, which there were quite a few times in this where I just straight up didn't look at the art and I just went from speech bubble to speech bubble and was like, turn the page, turn the page, turn the page.
I really like the art
getting
of
through it.
this. Like there was sometimes like the art had a really like
Jeff,
kind of like a
I
golden
don't want
silver
Stephen
age look.
King butterflies.
Like I really appreciated the art kind of having like this old school look. Like sometimes it looked like shots like this. Like it looks like something from like a 1940s comic book. Like there's something kind of like weirdly timeless about it, about some of the art in here.
Remember in the beginning when that guy's face exploded?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't really understand what happened there.
He lost his protective amulet.
Yeah, his girlfriend stole the protective amulet, which is actually ended up being Dr. D's mom, right?
And then and so it went.
Yeah,
his
and
face
because
just
he
went,
didn't have the protective amulet, the Burgesses were finally able to destroy him in a really gross
We're
way.
making connections in my brain. That's helpful. I got to look back at that one frame of the face exploding.
Pretty sure it's on the right.
Here she is.
Gross.
Yeah.
Makes me never want to eat meatloaf again.
Ew.
What?
No, don't show it.
We all read this. Unless you looked at the audiobook, in which case it looked like this.
Stop.
This is eyeballs flying.
Scott said there are 3 different artists across these first 8 issues.
Yeah, I did read something about that in Neil Gaiman's comments about
I
how
didn't go there, Kira. The artists went there. Took me along for the ride unwillingly.
it's Dr. D's mom. That I did not make
Matt,
that
you made it
connection.
worse. Okay.
Ew. Ew.
Yeah, you.
Ew. But it did take me a minute. It did, like, there were parts, especially in the beginning, that I was just coasting through it. I had no idea what I was looking at or reading, or like the comprehension was just not there for me in some points, and it like really lost me in places.
Well, and it's so interesting how many years that the first issue went through.
Yeah.
And that's something that like kind of was jarring for me.
Did anybody else read it on Hoopla on their phones? Because there has this feature, which I think was very helpful for me, where it like zooms in and like moves through the pages. So it like start in the first frame, and then it'll go to the next one, and it'll like focus in on this and this and this, and it'll like kind of help you through the pages.
Oh, I needed that because there were multiple times where I chose the wrong order in this book.
Well, there were a couple of pages that intentionally
did
throw
too.
you off. So there was, because normally, yes, it goes like this, but there were a couple of pages that went like this, and they were like split into thirds. And then there was that one spread where it goes all the way across both pages. And so that threw me off too. And
Yeah, I agree. My
learned
phone
things.
was really small, but it did help to like have that like the guided view on Hoopla. Like it
And I will say, if you're interested in reading more graphic novels and like Hoopla has a ton of comics and graphic novels available.
Yeah, when we read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, I actually read that as the graphic novel because it's like word for word the book.
Oh,
So
really?
when we read it, I read it on my phone as a graphic novel.
I read the rest of Resident Alien on Hoopla.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah, everybody's, you can afford a tablet and you want to get it. Like I would definitely agree. Like Hoopla was a really helpful experience for me, especially getting through this, because I would have gotten lost. I would have gotten lost big time.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I like about Hoopla too, because Jeff mentioned don't read comics on phones. A lot of times the layouts are really meant to be seen full in comics, and the layout's just really important. But
you can see both.
I feel like Hoopla would, when you turn the page, it shows you the whole page or the whole spread, and then it goes frame to frame, right?
No, well, maybe sometimes.
It did that when you do it on your computer. That's how it did it for me.
But there were times where I would, like, you can click in and out of it, and so you can like double tap, and it'll just like show you the whole spread. And I did that frequently because I also like to see the whole thing.
Leanne said, if it makes y'all feel better, all of us comic nerds had to learn how to read comics too. It's totally fine.
Yeah, I never learned how to do that. I didn't read a bunch of comic books. I read like the same 3 over and over again, and they probably had Cyclops in them. So I'm not as like adept a comic reader as I should be.
Yeah, my kid reads a bunch of manga, and I think it would break my brain. I think I would constantly like be flipping the book in the wrong direction and be like, I just read this. Hold on, I have to go back again.
I would have read this version, but Christy had it. So I could not. So I had to read it on here.
We both waited until the last minute too.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone take a shot. You're welcome.
Did you just mention Cyclops? Because you mentioned Cyclops earlier.
Oh, I've been mentioning Cyclops this whole time. But yeah, I would have, like, now flipping through it, like, this looks awesome. So for all of the people who are like, I want to read the comics. There's nothing better than reading a nice comic book. I agree.
It was really nice, actually.
I did. It smells good.
It smells like ink.
It smells like ink and popcorn.
Sounds like paper.
Joe, y'all just said Cyclops 8 times. I'm dead.
Yep. R.I.P. everybody.
Oh God.
But yeah, like there's definitely an art to this. Like people who are like comic books are for kids, like definitely don't understand like what it takes to make a good layout, panels and all that stuff. You can really appreciate it when you look at it as a whole. And I really appreciated the different colors and texts of the speech bubbles.
Oh yeah, I love that certain characters
Yes.
had their own font.
Like I always
I'm-
knew when Sandman was talking.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank goodness. That did help me like a lot. That was so nice to see. I wish
And
that
then-
was consistent through a lot of comics. Anytime you're talking to someone, that there were differentiations between the bubbles.
and the Dr. D had his own font. And
Was it Morningstar also that had his own font? Lucifer?
I don't remember,
I feel like he did.
but yeah, he definitely had his own font, and Sandman had his own font, and I really appreciated it. Like I think this is a really good for all of the yeah. See, everybody, we're preaching to the choir here. Yeah, Lucifer has fancy font, and yeah. So for all the what was I going to say? I don't remember. But there's lots of things that I appreciate about this. Like most of all, like the imagination. Like as horrific as a lot of this was, like some of the imagery in here is like it's so fantastical and bizarre, and like how do humans come up with this stuff? Like the way that his castle looks, or whatever. Like just all of these, like the way the characters look and all the imagery, and like I guess the triumvirate who rules hell now, the way that they look.
Joe, did you know there actually is a Dresden File graphic novel? I have it on my shelf because Christy gave it to me like a couple of years ago.
There's several actually, but they're like
really?
they're like stories
you-
between the books.
You have a special font. It's whatever like sarcasm font.
And actually, there's a lot of the Dresden File comics are on Hoopla. Not all of them, but a good number of them.
Lucifer was meant to be David Bowie. Yeah, yes. Other people were mentioning that earlier. Yeah. Who's to say you don't have a special font? Everybody here has their own font. Mine would be Comic Sans.
No.
Mine would have
Iris.
snack crumbs built into it because I like to snack on stuff while I read, and I get crumbs in my books sometimes.
Yeah.
Snack
And now we're
crumbs.
talking about like just even the look of the speech bubbles. Like
Sorry, I forget reading the comments.
which comment? Ugh. I want to see this. It's like a smiley face and a finger pointing up. You can use your own handwriting, make your own font. That's cool. Dan's papyrus. But even the speech bubbles were like squiggly and like, I don't know. I just really, really appreciated that. And it's not something you see in Garfield.
Yeah. Also, like some of them, especially Dream, had a black background with like white font.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
cool.
he was the only one that had that. So that's why, yeah, it was so nice because right away I always knew when he was talking.
But like Beelzebub, his is like outlined in red.
Can we talk about his design for a second?
Whose design?
Beelzebub.
Oh,
Why
the
on?
upside down ass with like
Because when I
bug
first
eyes or something.
when I first saw it, I thought it was fly eyes, but then you see the rest of his body later, and you're like, "Is he a scrotum?"
Is he just like an upside down? Can I even show this on the internet? I mean, you see anything on the internet.
It's
Yeah.
terrible.
He's like a butthole with testicles.
No, he's a scrotum with legs.
Oh, he's
It's-
upside down.
Not always.
And then this one with the eyes, the floaty one. These all look like characters from Doom, really.
Let me see.
It's really horrifying.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was a fly at first, but then it's just like truly hellish. But here they are standing at the top of the thing. He's a lot smaller than I thought it would be. But yeah, this is very imaginative. This whole thing, and then finally, like the one guy that's like, "I'll challenge you." It's like this, like he's just like a club guy. He's like if Bebop was a demon. Bebop from the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. Oh no.
He's got two mouths. He's got a mouth on top of a mouth. That's extra eating. Sometimes I wish I had that.
So I found 2 little trivia things online about
I love trivia.
this volume. Let's see. When the comic was first developed, the standard practice at DC was to give new series a year-long test run and notify authors after 8 months whether it would be prolonged. That's why Gaiman wrote an 8-episode arc with the initial plan to end the run with a series of one-shot stories. So that's why this is 8 issues.
Okay, so this is just a trial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other piece of trivia is that Gaiman's stylistic intention in the first arc was to pay homage to a different subgenre of horror in each issue, from Victorian horror to splatterpunk.
Whoa.
And I thought that made a ton of sense when I read it. It's like that explains like why each issue is so different, even though they all like have the same overarching storyline.
I think that's a great. Yeah, I read that line twice.
Oh yeah, this line. I thought that was a good line too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like you need the opposite so you can appreciate the other things. It's like, what is beauty without ugliness?
But also it's depressing because, like, what is torture without hope?
Yeah. I mean, hope was kind of the trump card there at the end. It had Demon Bebop like, I got nothing. But they really went big with that whole one-upmanship battle.
Yeah.
More consistent by the next volume almost immediately. Well, that's interesting. Like now I want to read it just to compare.
Yeah, me too.
Did anybody else read the forward and the afterword by the editor Neil Gaiman, where they're both like basically like, yeah, it's kind of rough. It's kind of rough. And looking back at it, I do a lot of things differently, but you know what? I'm cool with it. I'm just gonna let it be. Which is a really interesting thing to hear authors say. About
Well,
their
and
work.
Neil Gaiman even said that there's something in each issue that he's really proud of and really loves.
But this is like one of his very first things that he ever did, right?
I think so.
So way to kick it off there, Neil,
Hmm.
with some truly horrific imagery. Can you imagine though, like writing a story and then handing it off to some illustrators and then seeing what they come back with and being like, "Oh my god, that's incredible."
Would you be like, oh my God? Or would you be like, oh my God?
Be like, now I know what I came up with is pretty effed up, but like what you put
But
down on that page,
You made it worse, which was better, but worse.
I think it's really, I have a lot of appreciation for this, as disjointed and as kind of crazy as it was, and as horrific and traumatizing, and like, don't read it before you go to bed.
Oh yeah. Did anybody have bad dreams or like weird dreams while reading this? Because I definitely did.
You did.
I won't know until tonight.
Oh, I
Did you
see.
read it all today? Oh man. Well,
I'll let you know if y'all see me posting in the group at 2:00 in the morning. And I'm like, hey, who's awake? What you doing? Want to talk about puppies and butterflies and cookies?
We can have a support group tonight in the lounge.
yeah. Who wants some eye bleach? Post it. But yeah, I think we already answered the question of would you read it? And I'm interested in this world and in this character. And sometimes he wasn't even the most fascinating part of it, but
Well, I'll say this. When we started this discussion, I had zero interest in reading more. Not like in an ugly way, but I was just like, okay, no, I read this and it was good, like checklist, but like that was enough. But now I'm not like gung-ho about it, but I'm intrigued enough to give at least one more volume a try.
Well.
And see from there. So
Christy definitely gonna do it.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna do it like tomorrow.
Well, now it's time. It's time to
Time for
find
what?
out. There's the music. It's time to talk about what you might read in January.
So we gotta
The poll options are coming up. Here we go.
We have a strong theme in
January 2023 book poll. What's the theme?
The theme is science fiction and fantasy anthologies.
Short stories.
Yes, or collections. And all of the options are available on Hoopla, and all of them have multiple authors or contributors to them. So it'll be interesting. And they're all kind of similar, but they're like different series, sort of.
So here are your options, and Christy will talk you through them because I also need to know. Option number 1 is the Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy 2017 edition.
Yes. So this has 354 pages, so we'll read the whole thing in January. And there's 20 contributors, and we've read 2 of them before in the book club.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So there's your first collection of short stories. The second one is the Nebula Awards Showcase from 2015. You can see some names in there.
Yeah. So, like the cover said, if you were able to read that, this is stories, excerpts, and poems, and there's 19 contributors. And this is 349 pages. So we will, if this one gets chosen, we'll read all of these as well.
Those are all Nebula Award winners, right? Or
I believe so.
all right. So
It should be based on the title of the book.
So that's option number 2. And finally, option number 3 sounds very similar to option number 1, is the Best Science Fiction and Fantasy of the Year, Volume 7. You can see some familiar names in that list as well.
7.
Yeah, that basically is the same name as the first option. But so this one is from works that were written in either 2011 or 2012. I couldn't quite tell. It's 640 pages. It's a big book, but we will not read all of it. There's 32 contributors, so we'll just make a decision based on which book you guys read or choose. And also, again, all of these are on Hoopla. So, and I'm pretty sure that's universal, like for everybody that has a library card in the US. And then they're all, of course, available on Amazon and stuff. So,
Yeah. So 3 different science fiction and fantasy short story collections. This will be a different experience for us because usually we talk about one story, but we'll get to talk about a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
In January. We'll figure out what the live discussion schedule will look like and how we're gonna do that coming up. But we'll post the poll. I have not scheduled the poll yet because I did last time and I wasn't supposed to. But
Wait until we make the graphic.
we got to make the
haven't made it
graphic.
yet. Well, I just found out what the options were today.
So we all did.
and some of you are saying you don't have Hoopla or your library doesn't have Hoopla. Some of them are available through Overdrive or Libby on my library, but I know that that's not universal. So we'll just have to see what's available.
So Dan
for you
says, how does
guys.
this work? Read also. So like Christy said, for the first 2 options, they're 300 and something pages. So we'll read all of the stories. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You can read you can pick and choose if you want to.
And if you're not feeling a short story, just skip it. And then during the discussion, you just don't have to talk about that one. And so I think there's like, these kind of books are always hit and miss. Like there's going to be some standouts, and then there's going to be some that just don't work for you. And so I'm really excited that I hope everybody's going to get something out of it
Yeah,
that
I
they
think
really
that'll be
enjoy.
a fun part of the discussion too. Is like what stories work for people.
Yeah, and then that third book is like over 600 pages, and we will not be reading all of those. Do not worry.
Yeah.
So if that book gets chosen, we will choose what makes sense.
Yeah.
And we'll fill you in on what that means later.
Yeah, as the hosts, we'll probably try to read as many as we want to. But if like, I think it's okay for us to, we get to a short story that doesn't resonate with us, we can DNF it and then just move on to the next one. And then the discussion will say, I didn't like it, so I skipped it.
Yeah. Oh gosh, we could actually do that too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
That's so weird.
Yeah. So we'll be reading a bunch of books. A bunch of little books in January, but it's something new and something different. And I'm excited for it. I hope you are too. And stay tuned for the poll, which will go up as soon as the graphic is made.
Which will be tomorrow.
Which will happen when it happens.
Okay,
it will
got
happen
it.
when it happens.
By tomorrow night.
By Friday.
Okay.
For sure.
So spread the good word that in January, because not everybody came to this live discussion. In January we'll be doing short stories, and we'll have
by Friday for sure.
A compilation of short stories to look forward to. Science fiction, fantasy. I'm always excited for these because I was like thinking about the the old days where you'd have like your science fiction and fantasy like periodicals or whatever they were called that would come out, like where new writers would find their voices and people were like vying to get a part of. And this kind of feels like that. So I'm glad these things exist.
Yeah, and if you want more information about like what kind of stories are in there, Goodreads is a really good resource, of course. There's a lot of people who like went story by story and said exactly what they liked and didn't like about it and how many of them they liked. So and what they're about too, mostly. So if you want that kind of information, it's there in some format.
It's all there. So, feel free to do your research and all that stuff. So that's coming up. Poll's coming up next week.
Crabs,
Cyclops, Star Trek. The Literally Wasted Holiday
Cat.
Hangout
Oh yeah.
will be next week. Lucas will be back. He's on a work trip right now. That's why he's not here. We miss him. But he'll be back. We'll have a good fun time. And we'll talk about maybe after this live discussion what we got planned for it. We'll figure some stuff out. But it's gonna be a good time. It always is. And I'm looking forward to it. It's always just a good time for everybody just to get together. If you signed up for Secret Santa, remember that thing's going.
Yeah.
All the assignments have been made, or the matches have been made. So you have your Secret Santa. We're trying to loosely do the Icelandic Jola Buckaball.
Yeah, that.
Where you send
send
your favorite book and some chocolate or something like that.
If you want.
You can do as much or as little as you want. It's just a season for sharing, and that's what we're doing.
And make sure to check Elfster to see if you have any questions you need to answer. And then if you have no idea what to get your person, you can always ask a question. It comes over anonymously.
Yeah. So
my person, I think, did ask me a question and I didn't answer. So if you're watching,
hell yeah.
Well, it's because I don't like steering people in the right direction. I'm genuinely going to enjoy whatever is sent to me because I feel like you chose it for a reason.
Yeah. I know that the person that I gift for is watching. I've seen their name come up in the comments.
Oh. I sent my gift out today.
Did you try to evil laugh and then cough?
Yeah, I got choked up.
Oh, Dan, you're right.
Oh, Dan, you're grounded.
Zombie book. We'll put that one on the screen. It's rule now. So anyway, this was fun. This was a fun experience. I think I'm glad that we got to share this trauma together. That's what we do here in Literally Wasted.
Trauma together.
Yeah, we don't. The thing is, in Literally Wasted, we read something traumatic. We don't do it alone. So,
that should be our tagline: Literally Wasted, a science fiction and fantasy book club, group therapy.
Yeah, we share our trauma.
Yes.
So
whether you want to or not.
So this was fun. I'm glad that we read this, and I think it's really opened my eyes to a new world, and maybe we'll read some more of it. And then next month we'll have a bunch of new worlds to explore, a
Yeah.
bunch of new stories. So that's exciting too. And tune in next week for the holiday hangout.
I love all these taglines y'all are doing. It's great.
Therapy in bulk, group trauma club, literarily wasted. We don't do it all. Well, all right. Is that it? Is that it? Is that all?
Great. These are all great.
I think that might be it.
That's it. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. We're glad that you were here, and we wish you the best of nights and the best of weeks to come. And we hope to see
hopefully
you
we
back.
see you next week.
Next
Yeah.
week for the
We'll see you
holiday
in
hangout.
1 week.
It will be festive and much less traumatic.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Fingers crossed.
Probably.
All right. Good night, everybody. See you soon.
You have no one to harmonize with.
Lucas, let's harmonize.
That's not the same.